Have you ever wondered how coding interviews in companies such as Amazon look like? Today I will show you. Hi there, my name is Dada Sasha and you're on the Test Club channel. Test Club channel is a channel for self-taught developers where I demystify software development and explain complex things in a simple words. So let's have a look at today's agenda. First of all, we will overview a structure of a typical coding interviews at companies such as Amazon. Then I will show you by example how they will usually introduce to a coding challenge that we will need to make. I will explain how a working environment will look like. We will also recall our strategy to approach such interviews. And finally, I will demonstrate a coding interview on a very simple coding challenge. So first of all, let's recall the structure of such interviews. The interview will take around 1 hour and it will consist of two parts. Those are of an equal importance both. First part or second part might be coding interview and the other part will be behavior interview. Remember, both are very important. The coding part, the coding challenge itself, will take around 20 to 25 minutes. The coding challenge will be usually presented in a written form, a couple of paragraphs explaining the problem that you need to solve. And it might have some missing bits and pieces, so it might not necessarily include all the information required to solve a challenge. Like in real life, a story you're working on not necessarily going to include all the information. You will not have any IDE support. It will be essentially an online whiteboarding challenge. And taking this into account, I would suggest you to practice more writing a code without an IDE support. Write code on a piece of paper, in a notepad, whenever you can. The interesting thing here is that you're not supposed to come up with a compilable code. You don't have to avoid all the kind of mistakes and errors. It's not about that. But you should be able to write a code without a Google, IDE help or anything like that. Well, of course, the fewer mistakes you make, the better, but you don't have to stress too much about making typos, mistakes, not remembering a particular name of a particular function, these sort of things. Okay, so let's recap the strategy to pass in such interviews. First of all, make sure that you do understand the challenge. Do not rush to solving it. Understand the challenge first and ask questions about boundaries, validate your assumptions, state your assumptions aloud. You don't want to solve the wrong challenge at the end of the day. Now, when you do understand the challenge, your first goal would be to come up with the working code, not necessarily the most efficient code. You can always optimize later. Of course, if you know how to come up with efficient code from the first attempt, that would be even better. But if you don't, do not stress about efficiency just yet. Very important to remember to think out aloud. It's not about you solving the task, it's more about showing an interviewer how you think and solving the task at the same time. Both things are very important. And what I would personally recommend is to not to forget to test the code you had written. And if you can, if you know how, try to test drive your solution. But if you can't, just don't forget to test your code before you think it is done. We're done with recap. Let's jump to the challenge. So have a look at the screen. That's how the coding challenge at the Amazon style interview will look like. You will be given some link to some more or less functional code editor, which will have some highlighting, but you will not be able to check your code for mistakes, typos, these sort of things, and you will not be able to run the code. In our case, I'm using the LeetCode Playground, but in your particular case, the functionality of the code editor will most likely be even more limited. And that's how the challenge is presented usually. It's just a comment in the code explaining what you need to do. In our case, we are doing a very simple phase bus exercise. So I will try to emulate and explain step by step how I think you should approach that. But first of all, as I mentioned, we are reading the challenge. We can actually read this aloud if we want to. And then what I also would recommend is to rephrase the challenge just to check the understanding. So for example, let me read this aloud. So write a short program that prints each number from 1 to n on a new line. For each multiple of 3, print fees instead of a number. For each multiple of 5, print bus. And for numbers which are multiples of 3 and 5, print fees bus instead of a number. So at this point, I will probably try to say something like that. So I need to write a program that will take some number n and will print all the numbers from 1 to n. And if the number that I'm printing is divisible by 3, I'm printing fees instead of the number. If it's divisible by 5, I'm printing bus instead of the number. And if divisible both by 3 and 5, I'm printing fees bus. And I would also probably try to show an example. I will be probably looking at my interviewer to check understanding if they agree with what I just said. Did I understand the challenge properly? And I will also try to write some examples. So for example, am I right assuming that my program for the input n equals 15 should print something like that? 1, 2, fees, 4, 5, 5 should be buzz, fees, and until 15, which is fees, buzz. And they would probably say, yeah, that looks good. And by doing this, I also already clarified a couple of things. For example, it's not impossible that they wanted me to print fees in quotes, because it's given in quotes here. Most likely it was not like that, but it never hurt to double check. And now I will also ask some questions like, for example, what are the limits for n? What is the maximum value for n? What is n max? And what to do if n, for example, is less than 1? How we should handle this? And most likely they will tell you that you can ignore this, but they will definitely note that you asked those questions. And that will be most likely accounted as a good sign. Let's say that the interviewer suggested that we can just ignore any n values which are not valid. So 0 and minus, we can ignore that. And we also not going to restrict n to any other numbers. So n can be anything. So what we're going to do now is to solve the challenge. So now we have the understanding, and we also had printed an example output, and we have confirmed with the interviewer that it works. Now we are going to write a program, and I'm going to use Python. As I mentioned more than once already, it doesn't matter which programming language you're using, but I'm always recommending to use the one which you like the most, which you're comfortable the most with. So in this case, it is to write a short program, not a function. So you would probably need to do some code taking an input from someone. So that's one of the things to discuss, like how this input is coming to your program. Are you reading this from file? Are you reading this from standard input? And I will try to negotiate this. And if I don't want to, for example, go into reading from file realm, I can suggest that let us assume that the number is provided by the user from command line. So and I will check if interviewer is okay with that. Most likely they will. So let's say print, and while writing the code, I will also try to explain the interviewer my thoughts here. So what I'm trying to do here is to write a message to user saying that you need to input an integer. So let's say please enter n for fees bus program. And then don't forget that you not need to worry too much about remembering all the functions, because you're not going to run the code actually, and I don't remember how this read line input will work in Python, just don't remember by heart. So let's say n will be input, and it's okay to say that you don't remember what is the right function for that, but let's use a pseudocode for this here. Obviously you want to minimize these kind of things, but you don't have to avoid them altogether. So I have my n number, and what I'm probably going to do here, I'm going to write a function, let's say print these buzz n. And that's the skeleton of my program, right? So now I need to define this function, and I need to write a logic for this function. So because I'm printing numbers, most likely I'm going to use a loop. I don't think I will use for this a recursion. For different reasons, loop is looking more readable for me, and also easier to write and debug. And that's what I'm doing here. I'm just explaining what I'm thinking, my chain of thoughts. So that is print this bus, which accept one argument, and then we are going to have a loop for index in range. And here what's happening, because I need to print numbers from 1 to n, and range would actually print numbers from 0 to n minus 1. What I'm going to do, I'm going to use a different range function, which will be range from 1 to n plus 1. And let's start with the most simple case. We are not doing anything, we just printing the number, so we print our number. And now I see that index is not a very nice name. Let's say a number will be more readable. Okay, so now I need to check if the number is divisible by 3. So the simplest case here would be to have a simple if. So if number divided by 3 equals 0, then we print this, I think, and else we print number. So similarly we can do if elif number is divisible by 5, we print bus. Now why I was saying you need to test your code, because I for example could say that okay, that looks good, but I can double check if the code is good. So for example, if n was 3, what would be the output? And you will try actually to count this in your mind. So we start with 1 is going to, this if is going to be false, this if is going to be false as well. So we're going to print number. So we're going to print 1, then number is 2, this is false, I'm going to print 2, and then number is 3, and so on. Now, but what if n is 15? In this case, we will print fizz instead of a fizz bus, and that is because 15 is divisible by 3. So what you can try do is to add elif here, but instead of this, instead of trying to catch a case where actually that's not going to work if I add elif here, because now you need to make sure that you check for numbers that are divisible by 3 and 5, and you also need to exit the loop. So for example, if I write it here, if number is divisible by 3 and number is divisible by 5. And if I just print here, it will break my program, because it will print fees bus and then fees and then bus. So instead of just one line fees bus, I will get 3 lines, and that's not something what I want. So what I can do here is I can take this whole logic into a different function, and instead of the print I can use return. So whenever let me do it like that. Let me use this return here. Sorry if I'm jumping in my thoughts, but because just so fees bus here, right? So this is not working. Let me grab this into function, and let's call function def get number or format number. I'm not sure. Let's say it takes number, and here we have this if, but we're going to return. And now we don't need to worry about elifs here, right? We're just going to have if. We're going to get this else out. So if return 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4, and same is if return here return, and finally if none of the ifs worked, we just return number. And I see I have a formatting error here. If you're short on time, you can actually ignore formatting errors, but if you're not short on time, fixing them might be a good idea. So this will work fine now, but again, it's very good to just test it, just in your mind. So if number is, oh, it's not going to work fine because I did not call this. So print get number. And I see that get number is not a very nice name. Let's say format. Format would be better. Format, okay. Like that. And then going back to testing, you just test in your head. So number is 3. We're going here, but 3 is not divisible by 5. So we are not returning fees bus, returning fees. And this code is working. So let's say you tested this in your head. If there is some time, a recruiter will ask you, can you improve this a bit? You can possibly try to improve this by avoiding this if here, because you can just try to concatenate fees and bus here. But you will have to have another if here. So let me show what I'm saying. You can just delete this and say output equals empty string, and then output will be output plus fees, and then output will be plus bus, and then if not, if output return output. But I don't see this as an improvement. It's kind of I'm just getting rid of one if and I'm getting another if. So let's say this one can be more or less fine. And that's how you would solve the challenge for the Amazon style coding interview.